Okay, hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try and do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you are new here, welcome, and if you are returning here, welcome. And if you missed last week, I just subscribed to a text service. So if you want to be notified when I do go live, you can text the words Dana Live to 22999. Is that right? 22999. Yes. Dana Live. That's confusing, isn't it? Because you have to say Dana Live 2222. It's 5 digits. So it's 22999. Text Dana Live. Yes. Okay. So, and then you will receive the text alert whenever I go live or if a live stream is canceled. So cool. Jennifer says that she got the text. Yay. Colleen, welcome. She says, hi, Dana. It's been a long time. Yes, yes. Lots of familiar faces in here tonight. How is everybody doing? Yes, Jack asks, so Dana, do you have a short number now then? Yes, I did. It was quite the process. So if you've already signed up for it, you don't need to do anything. It all transfers over. But if you are new and would like to be notified of when I go live, you can text Dana Live to the number 22999. And yeah, then you will know. So let me see. Speaking of which, oh, you can also text questions to that number. And I did get a question last week. Let me see if I can find it here. Maybe. I'm still okay. Yes, here we go. Here's a question that somebody texted me. So again, if you have questions, you can text them to once you subscribe, you can just message me there. So question is, why do I feel so bad about lashing out verbally to a narcissist I was with who literally had 80% of the red flags from your red flags videos? I cursed him out. Now I feel bad because he came back around and makes me look like the crazy one. My rage was insane after finding out the truth. Thoughts on this? Thank you. Hugs and kisses. So I guess my initial thought to this is, do you feel bad? Um, because that feeling doesn't seem to kind of go along with the rest of what you're saying. So I guess I would want to dig a little bit deeper as to if that's the correct word that you actually feel bad about lashing out against him? Because then you later on say, I cursed him out. And now I feel bad because he came back around and makes me look like the crazy one. So is is it that you feel bad or is it that you feel frustrated or angry or um, uh, upset with yourself for responding to him or something else? I guess I'm saying I'm feeling that there's a mismatch there between the feeling and the rest of the statement. Um, and then you go on to say, my rage was insane after finding out the truth, which makes complete sense because it's enraging when somebody's being deceitful. And then, um, especially in this kind of a context where, you know, maybe they kind of provoke you, you explode, they come back around and then spin the situation to make you look like the difficult, crazy one when in fact it's them. So that's all perfectly normal and understandable to feel that way after with such a crazy making person and situation. But I guess I would need some more clarification on um, the first half of the question there. So let's see here. Let me scroll here. Oh gosh, UNA, I'm so sorry. If we missed a question from you, um, please ask. Please ask it again. If we didn't answer it, we just didn't see it. Jack, yes, that short code number, it's a 5-digit number. It's 22999. Ember says, "I've missed y'all. Did major empowerment yesterday." Well, good for you. That is very exciting. What kind of major empowerment did you do, if you don't mind me asking? Yeah, Jennifer was saying, oh, basically, she's glad that I got a short code number. She says it helps because a lot of times I just don't get YouTube notifications for live streams. Yeah, that's been an ongoing issue for a lot of people for a lot of different channels. And I'm glad I finally made the jump to do this. Okay, let's see. Jack is lovingly pressuring you and A into to repeating her question. Jack asks, mentions to Cecilia, he says, "A good evening to you, Cecilia. We've still been floating the Discord idea." Yes, and this is something I need to look into. I had been messaging back and forth with somebody about moving the forum to a different platform. That's it is still up in the works. It's frustrating because I just don't know the questions to ask, and it's yeah, it's a lot of trial and error. Let's see here. Let me scroll. Ember says, a lifelong friend sent me a stream of text jokes joking about women that had been sexually assaulted. Ugh. So I wrote him a long letter explaining how that is never okay. Yeah, good for you. Good for you. It's really concerning when people find those kinds of jokes funny and that they don't see any problem with sending those, like forwarding those jokes to other people. It's that's really disturbing. Colleen says, "Dana, you helped me get through my first awful breakup with a narcissist 2 years ago. I took a year and I met someone. Even though he is attentive and honest, I feel myself always looking for empathy in him." Okay, so could you describe or yeah, I guess describe that a little bit more? Some people, like, I guess what I'm trying to ask is kind of where along the spectrum is it? Is it, uh, he just there just kind of isn't that click in terms of empathy? Or, I mean, does it seem more on like the benign, um, benign side of the spectrum, or is it more on the cold, insensitive, cruel, calloused side of the spectrum? And how does he approach it when you talk to him about it? Colleen says, "Well, now I feel like he might also be a narcissist." Yeah, and I agree. Cecilia says, "Try not to get too hung up on the label. Is his behavior harming you?" And I would also encourage you to think about too is um, because like Colleen says, well, his behavior might be cultural. It might be, but I think at the end of the day, it's whether or not his um, behavior works for you. So there's always going to be times when two people are authentic in a relationship that there's going to be somebody's going to step on somebody's toes. There's going to be hurt feelings. There's going to be misunderstandings. There's going to be miscommunications. These things are just inevitable. It's not so much about these things never happening. It's more about how do the people involved handle these things when they do surface. So if he does something that comes across to you as insensitive or otherwise lacking empathy, and if you were to bring it up and say, um, I was really looking forward to us, I don't going, talking to you about my day. I had a really rough day today, and you just seemed very disinterested or aloof. And I was really hoping for a different response. Like I just really needed you to cuddle with me or to be able to talk to you about it. How what is his response to something like that? Does he become defensive and attacking and blaming and blame shifting and divert the topic and start focusing on everything that you do wrong? Or is he open to some constructive criticism like that? So, but ideally, a response to that kind of constructive criticism would be something like, "Oh wow, I did not mean to come across like that. Yes, I really do want to hear about your day. Um, please let's talk about it." Or um, something that acknowledges that he hears you. And of course, that level of constructive criticism and openness and solution orientedness would ideally be reciprocal, right? Or reciprocated. And so that can take a little time to kind of get in step with another person like that. But it's not so much whether or not they have empathy or whether or not they're necessarily even a narcissist. It's just how do they handle conflict or confrontation or just differences in general or that levels of emotional availability. Okay, UNA, her question was, well, okay, the question, it was kind of about over reliance on narcissistic recovery channels and if that might be unhealthy. I kind of think I'm wearing out my welcome. Well, I definitely don't feel like you're wearing out your welcome here. Um, in terms of your concern about over reliance on narcissistic recovery channels and if that might be unhealthy, I think it definitely can be. And this is something that it's been the direction that I've always wanted to head with my channel. Um, talking about things is wonderful and it can be very validating. And getting validation is very helpful and obviously very validating. These things are wonderful, but there's more to healing than just, talking, continually talking about what happened and how we were re-victimized or what have you. There's many steps out, past that mark that really help kind of complete the healing process. And I'm hoping to be able to tie that together more um, here, especially in this next year. So I agree with you completely. That's been on my heart and on my mind for 5 years now. But unfortunately, in my own personal life, it's been one thing after another. I had the house fire and then my dad developed cancer and passed away. So I had like two major things within like a 3.5 year period. Anyways, so I apologize for that because it just kept knocking me back to square one. And I do want to move forward. There's so much more that I want to do that has to do with the healing part of it. So yeah, does that answer your question? Jonathan, thank you for the super chat. He says, heart emoji, hashtag the one who got away, hashtag female narcissistic abuse. Okay. UNA says, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. And I think, like I said, I think your concerns are very valid concerns. Um, my goal with everything that I do is to really work myself out of a job. So uh my hope is to be able to help people kind of learn and gather up some tools that will help them move forward and then not need to come to, well, not I don't want to say it that way maybe, but I'd like to be able to have a community that's more just geared towards healing, because there does come a stage in healing where people are so much more focused on um, kind of the next chapter in their life and like what that looks like, and that's where they want to be and that's what they want to focus on, and it's has very little, if anything, to do with um, you know toxic behavior. It has everything to do with examining their own stuff, and I think that'll be really, really cool. Cha cha cha. Let's see. Let me scroll, scroll, scroll. Yeah, Colleen was saying, yeah, that's very interesting. Understanding that my former partner was a narcissist was really helpful back then. But yes, I think we all have to get past that to get to the healing. Yes, I agree completely. That first step of understanding that, um, I guess you could kind of call it like neurodiverse, that everybody is not the same, and that the map that we initially had of the world and the people in it is is not complete, and that they're kind of a lot of the messages that I think the vast majority of people have received about love and commitment and friendship and marriage and relationships and all of that, it's it's not complete. And if it's not couched within the context of functional boundaries and standards and deal breakers and kind of these like bonus skill sets, really, then it can be very dangerous and damaging. And so now I try to work with people to think about, we don't even need to figure out, we don't even need to spend the time or wait around to figure out if somebody's a narcissist or a sociopath or has um, or to try to figure out what are their intentions. All we need to do is turn inward and figure out, okay, is this behavior that I'm experiencing, how does this feel? Like, does this work for me? If I'm feeling, or if anybody's feeling uh, you know uh, frustrated, ignored, devalued, diminished, um, disrespected, kind of this whole range of uncomfortable emotions, then all of this stuff is, those emotions are worth bringing up. And so it's kind of a double whammy, right? So if you're feeling this way, then that's a signal that there's something that needs to be addressed. And if you bring this up in your relationship and the other person doesn't handle it well, and they become blaming, shaming, they attacking, accusing, these kinds of things, then that really shows you, okay, this person does not have the interest or desire maybe to work towards a solution. They're not solutions oriented. They're not team oriented. They're, now I'm locked into a power struggle, and I'm not trying to be right. I'm not trying to win. I'm just trying to voice how I feel about this and work towards a solution, and they're not. So on the level of emotional awareness and emotional maturity, there's a big divide there. And is this going to work? Is this going to work for you? And and you'll know, because after well, I think you go through that once or twice with somebody, and you get your concerns are minimized or invalidated like that. That gets really old really quick, and then you realize, I can't have a relationship with this person. It's a very one-sided relationship. They're not open to discussion or to working towards a solution, and you know that's a difficult relationship to be in. Let's see. Let's see. Cecilia says, I had to block his number again. I told him I don't want to be friends. He does not at all respect my boundaries. He dumped me, but he still wants to keep in contact. I don't understand. Well, you know, I think you do understand because I think you summed it up pretty well. And it sounds like he's trying to keep that door open to, I don't know, to kind of pick up where things left off. So he didn't want a relationship with you, but he still wants contact with you for whatever reason. But the reality is he doesn't get a vote. So this is your life and you get to decide who's in your inner circle. So thankfully, right, we don't need to wait around for him to become okay with your decision. Your decision is your decision. You don't need to stand there and convince him of it, justify it, talk until he gets it, any of that. You don't need to own any of his uh, outrageous behavior. So, you know, he doesn't get it. That's fine. It's completely understandable that you don't want to be friends with somebody who dumps you and who doesn't respect your boundaries, you know? And yeah, I just wouldn't waste any more time with people like that. It's exhausting. Nero Zero says, how do you beat a gaslighter in court? He's busy recruiting everyone to lie about me. Is there anything that can be done? Well, it depends on where you are in the process. So, uh, the really the best way to go about it is to have a paper trail and to have, video evidence, to have, um, to provide as much hard, concrete proof as you possibly can of what's going on. Because because they're not going to be able to have concrete proof of anything else, right? So if you're not doing things, they're not going to be able to have concrete proof. They're just going to have a bunch of people that's going to be just a bunch of hearsay, which it's not valid. So um, keep doing the right thing. Keep, you know, living your life in such a way that you're more focused on your character instead of your reputation, because reputation, none of us have control over that. Reputation is something that ideally goes hand in hand with our character, but that's not always the case. And in situations like this, when you have a real manipulative person stirring things up, um, kind of just realizing, okay, there's certain things I just don't have control over, but I'm going to focus more on my character and doing the right thing um, you know, and then documenting it along the way. So if you have to show it, prove it in court that you're able to. Gideon says, I don't know how to handle a psychotic, toxic person very near to me. She even stalked over LinkedIn to find my office details to threaten with cops so that my career will end. This These kinds of situations can be very challenging. There is a very popular YouTuber who just made a video, I think it was yesterday, about a stalker that she's been dealing with for over a year, who's been very aggressive, this kind of thing. This person's been stalking her on social media, creating I mean, it's like a full-time job for the stalker, creating multiple accounts, harassing her followers, just it's nonstop. And the point of me saying that is a lot of times when a person becomes obsessive like this out of the clear blue, you don't know them, you've done nothing to harm them or to wrong them, and they just have become kind of fixated on you for whatever reason, more often than not, that's kind of goes into like mental illness territory. So, and or personality disorder, but probably more so mental illness. If that's the case, which it generally is, then this is not somebody that uh, being rational with is going to stop anything, because they have their own ideas about who you are and reality in general, and a lot of these things. So sometimes, because you don't have control over what they do, unfortunately, we only have control over what we do, especially in situations like this. So, fully realizing that, I would encourage you to talk to the people in your office, your manager, whoever this person's trying to contact. Let them know what's going on, that this person found you online, um, kind of some, brief history about what's going on, that you don't have control over what they do or say, and that you're just, you hope that this won't um, interfere with your employment, that you're thinking about getting the police involved, um, these kinds of things. So it 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 might come down to that, getting the police involved and getting a restraining order, and all that. So, but even then, there's a chance that that's only going to go so far. Jack is talking about EMDR. He says a dear church friend of his is an EMDR practitioner, but she doesn't take state insurance, so I'm SOL. Have you I don't know. I know the world is in a very strange place now with pandemic stuff, and some places are opening up, some places are closing down. It's just all over the board. Have you spoken to, like, your local community mental health to see if anybody there is certified in EMDR? Because that might be a thought. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Embers is talking to Jennifer and says, I was diagnosed with some disabilities with concentration and memory. So I asked my therapist today if it could be ADD, and she said maybe. Yes. So this is kind of random, but this could help somebody out there. So I'll share it with you guys. So the other day, ah, the other day, this was like 3 days ago, I was in the middle of a meeting and my face began feeling really hot, to the point of, like, my cold hands felt good and I just kept touching my face because my cold hands felt so good. And I thought, oh, it's just my medication, because I normally take medication for ADD and depression. And that's one of the side effects, is flushing, and, so I kind of didn't think much of it. Well, I got done with the meeting and I was still feeling really, really hot. And I was talking to my boyfriend about it, and he made the comment. He said, well, maybe it's your blood pressure. And I thought, no, no, it's interesting thought, but no, there's no way that could possibly be it. My blood pressure's it it tends to run on either normal or on, like, the kind of low. So I've never had blood pressure issues before, and so I thought, well, I'm just gonna take it just to double check. And my blood pressure was so high that I thought my cuff was broken, because this I've had this cuff for a long time. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I really hope that reading is not correct. So I waited a few minutes, tried taking it again. It was still high. I'm like, no, this is just, maybe I don't have the cuff on right. It's difficult to get it on with y- yourself with just kind of one arm. So I switched arms, um, tried it again. It was still high, but this time it wasn't as high, which was good. Long story short, my blood pressure, I had been running at dangerously high levels for who knows how long now. So I immediately had to stop all my medication. Um, so the point being, if you are taking uh, stimulant medication, or there's certain antidepressants too. Um, I was taking Wellbutrin and Prozac that can raise blood pressure. And I think in my situation, it was the synergistic effect between three different medications that was causing it to just absolutely skyrocket. So I guess the moral of the story is, frankly, even regardless of the medication you're on, it's a good thing to get in the habit of uh, just checking your vitals, checking your blood pressure, checking your heart rate, checking your blood glucose levels, and just seeing if that stuff is where it should be, because it can sneak up on you. And normally with high blood pressure, if you're having symptoms, your blood pressure is dangerously high. So high blood pressure doesn't normally come with symptoms. So, okay, here is a great comment. Rosie, thank you so much. Says, how to tell apart harsh criticism and abuse. My dad tears me apart and leaves me crying for days. I still listen to him because he's knowledgeable. He hurts me and I don't know what to do. This is a great question. So, um, the general definition of abuse is mistreatment of another. I think you could simplify it down to that. Where it kind of becomes a little tricky is what is, in certain situations, what is considered mistreatment. It varies from person to person. However, this doesn't make you overly sensitive. It doesn't make his approach correct. It doesn't mean any of that. It means if he is approaching you in a way that is uh, having a detrimental effect and that you're not okay with, and frankly, I would say harsh criticism, quote unquote tough love, brutal honesty, stuff like this. It's not helpful. It's not wanted. There might be nuggets of wisdom um, folded into it, but to me, there's no need to destroy another person to get a point across. So that whole the way the message is delivered is unnecessary and it causes harm. And if the way that he's approaching you is leaving you crying for days and having a more of a destructive uh, effect on you, then that's not helpful. So I don't know how open he would be to if you were to say something like, "Dad, you really have a lot of great advice. I really appreciate a lot of the things that you say, but the way that it's said, it tears me up for days on end, and I just don't think it has uh, the helpful effect that you're going for, if he's even going for that." A lot of people don't get this. A lot of kind of people that tend to lack empathy, or they just think that they're right, you know, um, have a difficult time with accepting that their approach is off. And I think this is more common than not. Oh, well, I'm just really into brutal honesty, or you just can't handle the truth, kind of a thing. Or, oh, I just say it like it is. Well, then that kind of makes, if it's not received well, and if it's causing people to cry, and if it's hurting their self-esteem, then that makes that person a bully. We can talk. Different people have different senses of humor. Different people have different ways that they like being approached. Some people are all about brutal honesty if they're prepared for it. Normally, that kind of goes with a conversation of, I really value your opinion. I'm looking for some feedback. So, here's an example. When I write a book, okay, when I'm working on a book project, I have it go out to several different test readers to make sure that the intention of my message is being conveyed in the way that I want it to be conveyed. And it never ceases to amaze me what they come back with, okay, this didn't land well with me. I feel like this could be worded in a different way. Um, I found this one statement to be uh, really great. it's just you're seeing your work through a fresh set of eyes. But the difference between that level of brutal honesty and the kind of brutal honesty that you're on the receiving end of is I am asking for it. And I also I ask people that are able to deliver brutal honesty wrapped up in a tactful package. So they're able to point out it's not opinion. It's not them just saying, "Well, I think this is just dumb and da 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 da." Da." Like they're not just sounding off. They're giving specifics. Like I feel like these sentences are too long. I think it would be a lot a stronger message if you could shorten this up here. I feel like this is too personal or this isn't personal enough. It's very specific and it's not emotionally charged. And I know their intention. So that's the difference. So when people say, oh, you can't handle it, or this is just how I am, or whatever, it's not helpful. And the kicker is if they were on the receiving end of it, they wouldn't like it either because nobody does. Like nobody likes being on the receiving end of unwanted, brutal honesty because it's a jerk thing to do. So, and it's not helpful. Oh, hey, Bear. Thanks for the live stream donation and the cute little image of a flying pear. That's cute. So actually, let's go back just a little bit to what you were saying, telling the difference between harsh criticism and abuse. We can back that up a few steps and just figure out again what sits well with you and what doesn't sit well with you. So because and the reason I feel like this is important is because um, it's not just abuse that's the problem. There's a whole wide range of things out there that would not fall under the umbrella of abuse that are still a problem. And even if it's not considered abuse, although I would say unwanted harsh criticism to the point of making somebody else cry, that's abuse. That's bullying and that's abuse. But even if it was on the more mild end, if it was, let's just say it was unwanted advice. It was nonstop unwanted advice about how you should live your life. And even if it was coming from a well-intended place and it was um, delivered gently, if you found that to be annoying, which a lot of people do, because again, not a lot of people just want un, just this unwanted advice. Um, it's okay. It's okay to be like, really, I really don't want this unwanted advice. Like it's okay for you to have boundaries across the board with the kind of the conversations other people want to have with you. Like you don't just because somebody else wants to have a certain type of conversation with you doesn't mean that you need to allow that to happen. You know, so you could always kind of cut that off at the pass and say, "Oh, you know what, Mom, I really appreciate the concern, um, but I'm pretty set on the way that I'm going to be going about things, and if I need some advice in the future, I'll ask." That could be one way you could handle it. Or if a person is continually giving advice, just to say, you know what, uh, uh, it just depends on the dynamic you have with them. You could say something as kind of direct as, "Oh, you know what? I got this. I got this. Stay in your lane. Just stay in your lane. I got it." Or it could be more of if they're like your supervisor at work or something, you could but it's constant, uh, unhelpful, like unwanted feedback to just kind of say something. "Oh, you bring up a lot of good points. I'll think about that." You know, and then just kind of take a few steps back. Okay. Bricks and Feathers says, "Yeah, I grew up in a family with relentless teasing, mocking, and ridicule. I was expected to be able to laugh it off even as a kindergartner." Yeah. And that's the thing. Different people play around in different ways. And if somebody doesn't find that funny, then it doesn't mean that they don't have a good sense of humor. It just means that they don't find that funny. Everybody has things that they find funny, and everybody has things that they don't find funny. And it's there's a certain level of like emotional awareness to kind of know how to tailor your message to the crowd, right? To your audience at the time. Jokes that you're going to tell with friends are probably going to be different than the jokes you would tell to your grandma. Well, depending on your grandma, right? Or to your parents, or to your siblings, or to your boss. So if we're not able to kind of adjust um, to different environments, then it's a problem. So I know a lot of people get tripped up in that. It's difficult, especially if you're coming from a family where everybody quote unquote jokes like that, and nobody else takes it personally. Then they just kind of double down on it. They're like, no, 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 this is hilarious. And they keep doing it more to try to get you to see how funny it is. There was a whole issue about this on YouTube. Was it a couple, I don't know, a couple of years ago, maybe? There was a channel, I hope it's still off the air. I don't even want to mention their name to give them any attention because and frankly, in my opinion, it's just flat out child abuse. These people should be in jail. Uh, but it was a family vlog style channel, and they just picked on this one of their kids relentlessly. And this little boy was young, 4 or 5 maybe, and they were doing this for years. And this is, I mean, they would do stuff, they'd set up cameras, they would tell him that they weren't going to go on this vacation that he was all excited about, or they would try to scare him. They would dress up in costumes and jump out at him. It was terrorizing. And, the difference between what a person might be able to laugh off at the age of 15 versus the age of 5 are very different. And so this little boy was obviously being terrorized, and he was feeling terrorized by it. His other siblings, everybody else thought it was hilarious. This kid didn't. And his behaviors began showing that. He began acting out. Um, he was having trouble at school. He was becoming incontinent. He was having, quote unquote, all kinds of behaviors because he was being traumatized. And the parents just they didn't connect that to what they were doing because they thought it was funny. And again, it's just frustrating because it's like, well, you might have thought it was funny and your intentions might have even been good, because that's just the way that you guys joke around, but it was traumatizing to your son. So because of that, you need to stop. It's beyond frustrating. Okay, let me scroll up. It looks like I got a question here. Daisy says, if you're no longer in contact and live far away, so no chance of meeting, then why still Hoover? What's the end game? Who knows? Boredom, to see if they can still get a reaction out of you. Maybe they're horny, they're lonely, they just want somebody to talk to, they're hoping to get nude pictures from you. Who knows? To fill time. There's any number of reasons. But again, at the end of the day, like, um, I know it can be difficult to try to like let go of this because you're like, this does not make sense. Why is this person after all this time resurfacing in my life? Like, why would anybody do this? It's, you know, generally it's just one of those, they want money, they want attention, they want your time, they hoping for nudes, they're lonely, they're horny, they're bored, they're, some sort of reason. But the good news is we don't need to figure out what their motivation is. We just need to figure out what you're wanting in your life. So you don't have to suffer. Um, you know, as the song goes, you don't need to suffer any fools. So if it's not okay with you, it's okay to just to block that person and drive on. Amber says, yeah, my narcissist used to constantly put me down in front of everyone and then claimed he was joking. A lot of people with a lot of bullies do that, frankly. And it's disturbing um, how that kind of like it's passive aggressive, or you could even say flat out aggressive in certain situations, how much that flies under the radar. I've seen this time and time again with kind of snark, all of the different like the spectrum of snark on there, from kind of biting sarcasm all the way to kind of just undermining comments, to just poking at somebody's soft spot, to just i- i- it's humor, it's bullying under the guise of humor. And for a lot of people, it's, especially the ones that are the butt of those kinds of jokes, it's not funny. It's just mean. So, okay, let me scroll up here. Okay, this is interesting. Down the rabbit hole, Bill asks, okay, I have a question. And I think you meant project. Do they project on a normal person and then the normal person throws it back in their face and then they play the victim because you did it and you did not keep their trash feeling? Is this correct? Yes. But here's the thing with projection. Projection is a defense mechanism and it's something that we all do. It's within the kind of like menu of defense mechanisms that we all have. And the kicker with projection is when a person is projecting, they're they're it's a subconscious thing. So they're not usually aware of it. They might become aware of it if you were to call them out, or if somebody were to call us out if we were doing it. So what projection is when we're having uncomfortable thoughts or feelings, and because they're uncomfortable, we're trying to get rid of them and we're putting them onto somebody else. So let's say, for example, if uh let's say you and I are friends, okay? And I have an issue. I have some sort of issue with you, okay? And instead of admitting this to myself or feeling comfortable bringing it up or what have you, I might I might project it onto you. And I might say, well, Bill, I'm just concerned. Is there anything that we need to discuss? Is there any concerns that you have about our friendship? I just feel like you've been acting different lately. And maybe you haven't. You're like, what are you talking about? No, there's no issues and you're fine. But it's because I'm putting my concerns about our friendship onto you. So now if you were to kind of throw that back, and this can be done in a tactful way too, of saying, you know, I don't have any concerns about our friendship, but the fact that you brought this up kind of makes me wonder if maybe you do. Is there anything that you think that we might need to discuss? And when it's reflected back at the person who's doing the projecting, it can bring that level of awareness of, oh, well, actually, now that you mention it, I was a little bit hurt that you canceled. Um, we were supposed to hang out on a Zoom chat the other night and you canceled. And I was really hurt by that or something. So sometimes there can be kind of this resolution and this awareness that comes from quote unquote calling somebody out when they're projecting, but it depends on the person. If you're talking about a person who is in uh, extreme denial and accusing you of really hurtful things, oh, you're cheating on me. They're paranoid, they're jealous, they're thinking that you're cheating or stealing from them. These kinds of things, calling them out even tactfully on that tends to not go over well, and it can really put a person in harm's way. So y- really, in order for there to be any resolution of any concern that a person has, both people have to be sharing the same reality. So if you have one person who's lying and cheating and stealing and just doing whatever, and they're in denial about it and they're trying to justify it, oh well, I cheated because you're just always at work, and I stole from you because you know what, I do a lot around here. So, I feel like you just owe me. And they're justifying it and justifying it to themselves. And um, you're not sharing the same reality because they're continually editing their reality to make themselves okay with their behavior. And that gets real dangerous real quick. Jennifer says, I wonder, would harsh criticism to an addict be over the line? Frankly, I don't think I think you have to think about what is the intention behind whatever communication that you're trying to deliver. So, keep in mind, one of the biggest barriers to effective communication is defensiveness. When defensiveness is present, connection is not. And if you're trying to sincerely help another person, the only way to be able to do that, so that they don't go into that fight or flight mode, is to kind of steer clear of this defensiveness. So you'll notice if you've ever watched the show, um, what is it? The show about rehab intervention. Fantastic show. When they meet ahead of time. So the therapist is going in ahead of time. They have a game plan. And I would imagine that there's a discussion about coming from a place of empathy and care and concern, and not coming from a place of anger, shame, and blame. And being setting this very firm boundary of and this is why they write it out in a letter, because it's to avoid a lot of that unhelpful emotionality that can come, because there's going to be anger and resentment that's been building up for a long time before a person gets to the point of an intervention. And bringing all that up is only going to make that person feel attacked and shamed, which is going to make them pull away and feel like, oh, you guys don't care about me. And so screw you. I'm out of here. I don't need this. So that's what we want to try to avoid. So coming from that place of, if I'm going to be able to get through to this person that what they're doing is destroying them, I need to make it about them, and I need to make it about the relationship that I have with them and come from that place of care and concern. So it's all about, okay, um, John or Jane, um, here's these are the things I really love about you. This is what you mean to me. And this is what I enjoy so much about you. This addiction that you have to whatever it might be, alcohol, heroin, you name it. I see I see the toll it's having on you. It's destroying your life, and it's taking away the person that I knew and that I loved. And you're talking about it in terms of um, you're getting trying to connect with them as a human being, right? And a human being that has an addiction, and that this addiction is the problem. You're not the problem. The addiction is the problem. We need to get you help for the addiction, because the addiction is what's causing you to lie and steal and to become a very different person than the person that we know and love. So I guess the point being is, harsh criticism really tends to do more damage than good. I know a lot of people think, "Oh yeah, it's great, just brutal honesty, that kind of thing." There's only very certain circumstances that that's helpful, and it's an absolute if there isn't an understanding going in about that, I'm not even really a fan of brutal honesty, frankly. I think tactful honesty is the way to go. Like there's just no need to be ugly about it or hurtful, because hurtful things cause hurt. And when a person is hurt, they fall back into their different defense mechanisms. We all do. So thinking about, okay, how do you handle it when you get hurt emotionally? Yeah, some people become angry. Some people, which tends to go hand in hand with defensiveness. Some people withdraw and they just want to be alone. Some people um, maybe go shopping. Some people might watch porn. Some people might gamble or have a drink or use a drug or do something to handle those uncomfortable emotions. So you can see those kind of defaults that we slip into as a short-term way to handle those uncomfortable emotions. It generally isn't it's not productive for anybody. So, yeah, I just think there's better ways of doing it. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll, scroll, scroll. Oh, I like that. Grandpappy. I missed part of the conversation here, but I'm gonna just make some assumptions here. So Grandpappy, his comment to Jack was, take her on a special date and act like little kids together, play together, be the little kids you guys couldn't be as a kid. And I'm guessing he's talking about Jack and Hufflemom. And I love that. Yeah, I mean, really, do you guys remember being kids and thinking, man, I wish I was an adult. Like adults have money. Like they can do stuff. They don't have bedtimes. Like this is I can't wait. I can't wait until I can just go do what within reason, right? Like I can just go do what I want to do, and I can stay up until 2 a.m. and I can go, eat pizza and do whatever I want to do. And then you're an adult and that the thrill of that kind of wears off, but it is kind of fun just to be like, yeah, like let's just go have some fun and do what we wanted to do. Building a pillow fort in the middle of the living room floor. Although that might be one of those things, like it sounds like more fun than it might be. My brother and I used to do that almost every single weekend, much to my parents' dismay, because we pulled every single pillow out. Of course, we had to clean it all up, but we thought it was amazing. And yeah, I guess now as an adult, I don't know if my back would like that so much, but I still think it would be fun. Okay. Okay, Rosie, this is a great question. She says, how do you know if you're not just being too sensitive? I'm scared of putting up boundaries because I might just be defensive or resistant. So here's my 2 cents on it is everybody everybody is different, and I don't think in terms of what a person topics of conversation, jokes, um, physical touch, um, emotional how emotions are handled, uh, topics of conversation, all of that radically varies from person to person, radically varies. So, because of that, I don't think that there is such a thing as too sensitive. It's more of differently sensitive. Now, it might be, I guess the case could be made if we're talking about too sensitive in terms of like unhealed wounds. So, let's say, for example, you were bit by a dog as a child, and now you're scared of dogs and they just make you uncomfortable. Well, you might have a legitimate reason to be intimidated by dogs because you were bit by one and it hurt, right? So another person who probably never had that experience or who wasn't left traumatized by that experience, if they did have it, in their mind, you might be too sensitive. But for where you are right now, you're not. Even though you might realize this is something that I feel like I want to work on and become more comfortable around dogs. So so in that kind of a situation, it's a little bit of both. So yes, there's some um, unhealed trauma that's present surrounding dogs. And as a result, you're not comfortable around dogs. And that's okay. It wouldn't be very nice or just empathetic, I guess, if somebody were like, "Oh, you need to get over it. Oh, come on, that dog bite was a long time ago. I mean, geez, when are you ever going to move on with your life? Dogs are great. You're really missing out." And they're shaming you about it and they're teasing you about it. And well, my dog is my baby, and I'm not going to put my dog outside. If you're going to be over here, you just need to deal with it. Like that kind of stuff is really lacking in empathy, and that's insensitive and hurtful. Even if uh, in that situation you are kind of quote unquote being overly sensitive, but there's a reason that you're overly sensitive to it. Does that make sense? And because there's unprocessed trauma there, um, it's that degree of hypersensitivity to dogs, it's worth exploring if you want. It's worth exploring and it's worth resolving. But in the meantime, it's cruel and unusual punishment to have somebody continue to um, disregard your boundaries surrounding dogs. Does that make sense? In other circumstances, well, I guess, okay, think of it this way too. You could have a room full of people, and a lot of times you will, that are all very different. You have some people that are atheist, you have some that are agnostic, some that are Catholic, some that are Jewish, some that are Muslim, some that are Buddhist, some, you name it. We have a wide range of religions in there. You have a wide range of political affiliations in there. You have a wide range of ages in there. You have a wide range of kind of belief systems in general and educational backgrounds, family backgrounds, trauma backgrounds, life experiences. So in any given room, you're gonna have a whole mixed bag of these kinds of things. And that in my book really goes into emotional intelligence and emotional awareness of having that degree of kind of empathy and sensitivity of not everybody is like us. Like, not everybody's like me. When I go into a room, realizing that I might think that certain jokes that I tell, hilarious, comedy gold, that might completely fall flat, and they usually do with other people, okay? So, like, just knowing that, knowing who you can joke around with in certain ways and who you can't, or what kind of conversations are appropriate with different people of different backgrounds. I'm not gonna go into, um, I don't know, discussing, uh, I don't know, horrific, um, child abuse techniques with a I don't, or just horrific. I'm not gonna go into trauma treatment, let's put it that way. I'm not gonna go into trauma treatment with, um, just anybody. I'm probably gonna talk to other people that are interested in that. So it might be other people that I work with, it might be other trauma survivors, but even still, the way that that conversation happens, it's going to be tailored to um, kind of that environment and that person's level of interest and receptivity and um, just degree of interest and all these things. So Uh, and here's the thing with boundaries is that boundaries are always all of our boundaries are always in a state of change. They aren't There's very few boundaries, I think, out there that tend to be like absolutes, hard and fast. The more like quote unquote social boundaries, let's say. I was going to say mild boundaries, but let's say social boundaries. Those change on a person to person basis, just like I was talking about. So the jokes that how my brother and I interact is very different from how my mom and I interact. So the boundaries that I have with my brother are different than the boundaries that I have with my mother. Same thing coming and going. The conversations that I'm open to having with my brother, having with me is different than the conversations I'm open to the conversations my mom might wanna have with me. Um, and you're able everybody's entitled to kinda navigate that line in the way that works best for you. So if, I don't know, let's say, um, somebody wants to talk to you about your drinking or something that you might be kind of sensitive about, your, former partner and that relationship. You might be more receptive to that if it's your friend or maybe a therapist, or maybe not, right? Maybe it's you might be more receptive to hearing that from, um, a distant relative or somebody at church. These things just completely vary from person to person. And you'll know if somebody's kind of crossed a line with you, and it doesn't have to be intentional and it doesn't have to be malicious. And I think oftentimes boundary violations aren't. It's only in the extreme case that they are intentionally, just outrageously violating. More often than not, it's just subtle crosses because nobody else knows where our boundaries are unless we make them known. So, um, that's why it's important to have kind of those discussions and to be able to know ourselves and enough that we can be ourselves. Because we have to be honest enough with ourselves to know what's comfortable for us and what's uncomfortable for us in order to be able to hold that line or to adjust that line with other people. Uh, let's see. Oh, okay. So I'm guessing this was the question. Huffle Mom, congratulations, says next month, the 12th of December, is Jack, and my 22nd anniversary. Just for funsies, how do you suggest we celebrate? I have to say, I absolutely love the advice that you got from, um, oh, what was the name? Big something Poppy, Grandpappy, Grandpappy. Yes, I love that. I love his advice. I think he was spot on. Yeah, go out, have a great time. The just fun. Just absolute fun. What you would consider fun and what John considers fun, and the 2 of you as a couple. Uh, let's see. UNA asks, "Hey, Dana, did you do those 2 paintings behind you? They're cool." Well, thank you. I did the butterfly one. I did that, like, very soon after my relationship with Jack ended, and I realized I was in this kind of emotional free fall, and it was absolutely terrifying because I just didn't know where I was gonna land, and I had never been in a situation where I felt like that, where I felt I couldn't kind of land on my feet, and, um so I realized, okay, I need to really snap into action here and kind of figure out a game plan. And so part of it was at the house I was living in at the time had this really cute little sunroom, and I had my little Buddha board, which it's up in my room. I'll have to bring it down at some point. It's all these sayings, kind of Eckhart Tolle inspired sayings that I put on this board about the mindset that I wanted to cultivate. It was it was kind of like my North Star. That was the direction that I wanted to head. And so then part of that was then painting this, and I ended up actually painted that with just my hands. And so that was just kind of my symbol to myself of, uh, I just need to transform and I need to, to do it full out. And so then my mom painted the sunflower painting. That was my birthday present from her this year. So, because that's again, and it's interesting that you ask this. So the sunflower painting ties into that, kind of circles all around. So the sunflower is the new logo for Thrive After Abuse, and kind of the concept of the sunflower is that it acknowledges the darkness, and um, but it always turns towards the light. So no matter what happens, it's turning towards the light. And that's really the concept that I hope to kind of inspire and pass along with what I do, is that um, we want to acknowledge that there is the hurt, there are these uncomfortable feelings, and they do exist in life. In many ways, life is full of change and pain, and but it's also a huge catalyst for transformation. And in many ways, it's what helps us to become kind of fully alive by just experiencing these different states of being, and developing that resiliency, and coming out on top. UNA says, "Wow, you did those wonderful curves on the butterfly with your hands. Wow." Yeah, I did. You should have seen my kitchen. It was a mess, but it was so much fun. It was so much fun. And I bought the biggest canvas that they had at Michael's, and I'm so glad that I did. It just really helped kind of set that intention within me of just getting clear the direction that I was gonna head. Uh, let's see. Speaking of EMDR, I'm actually gonna there's a two-part course on it. I'm getting certified in part 1 the first week of December. So I'm very excited about that, and I will report back. I've got big things in the works for 2021. So, yeah, lots of ideas. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll up here. Huffle Mom says, talking to Grandpappy, says, it's frustrating when you ask a person or a therapist, "Are you trauma informed?" and have to hear them reply, "What's trauma informed?" Or worse, "No, what's that?" and have to explain it to them. Yes, or I would say even worse than that is they say yes, but they really aren't. So, and that's kind of the thing with trauma, being trauma informed, is it varies on what type of trauma we're talking about. So, like, there's certain, um, kind of certain core practices to being trauma informed. There's what's known as like psychological first aid, which is a whole process that tends to go along with being trauma informed. But there's also, I don't know, in my opinion, there needs to be a lot more training, ideally working with certain people with certain challenges, because the trauma, for example, working with somebody who's experienced the trauma of getting a significant health diagnosis, cancer, COVID, HIV, something that is life changing, is one type of trauma versus childhood trauma versus working with, let's say, veterans, or working with domestic violence, or um, just kind of relationship trauma in general. It's very different. And so then you have like natural disasters, like survivors of hurricanes or tornadoes or these kinds of things. So it's a different type of trauma. So, and unfortunately, there isn't the level of, some places have better training than others, but uh, I think there just needs to be significantly more that's tailored to the specific challenges that that particular group is dealing with. So, because there's a lot even with certain trauma therapies like EMDR or like DBT, that if it's not kind of, again, couched within that context of the specifics that that group has dealt with. So, like, for example, if you're talking DBT or even certain types of like cognitive behavioral therapy, um, working with certain types, let's say somebody that's experienced a lot of psychological abuse. Maybe they are out of a cult, or they're out of a highly manipulative relationship of some sort, a cult, an abusive relationship, abusive work environment, some sort of highly manipulative um, type dynamic. Then certain techniques can feel and can actually be unintentionally gaslighting or unintentionally manipulative in that person, that practitioner. If they've never even experienced anything remotely like that, they're just not gonna understand how that could, it's not gonna be on their radar of things to kind of tread gently with, which is why I think there just needs to be a lot more specific training. Nance says, "I'm sorry, I have to run." That is no problem. We'll see you next week. Oh my gosh. Cecilia says, I actually did get bit by the neighbor's Rottweiler. The neighbor bribed me with pork and beans to stay quiet. It was a substantial puncture wound. Oh my gosh. Oh, that must have been so scary. And especially if, obviously the younger a person is for something like that to happen, the more traumatic it is. Um, you think about, Rottweilers are, they're awesome dogs, but they're big and they can be really scary. And they can be kind of big and scary even when you're 40, let alone when you're 4 or 8. Jennifer says, my boyfriend is one of those brutal honesty people, but I also think he's brutally honest on himself. I think it's because he's Dutch, and that's just how they are in the Netherlands. He just started doing a running regiment 3 times a week, and he's always exhausted. But he says it's because he's become fat and lazy. I've tried to tell him that he's not lazy because he works like 15 hours a day at a desk. So it's not like he's doing nothing. He works hard, but he's just always really harsh on himself and other overweight people because he says that's how it is all over his country. Yeah. And sometimes there can be more of that um, frankness. Certain cultures, um, I guess what I think of like English, um, British, I guess. They tend to be just a lot more straightforward with, whereas I think Americans kind of as a culture, we tend to, um, well, I was gonna say we tend to be more tactful, but that's not even true. I think Americans, we tend to really slide into pleasantries and we lie. And we'll say things like, "Oh, no, no, you look fine. That looks great." There's a lot of coddling and there's a lot of false compliments. And I don't think that helps anybody either. So there is that middle ground there. Uh, I'm not a fan of shaming, you know, but just that tactful honesty. Tactful honesty. I really feel like by and large, that's what's the most helpful, because just bullying ourselves isn't I mean, it's not motivating, It's just, then if we take up exercise, then it's not exercising from a place of self-love, it's exercising from a place of self-hate. And I just don't think that that's a constructive mindset. It might kind of get a person up out of bed in the morning, but I think it's important to shift that over to, I'm doing this because I value my health, and I want to live my best life, and I want to, you know, uh, whatever, be the best partner for my significant other, or be able to run a 5K, or to do these things because I want to experience life, not because I hate myself. Crystal asks, Dana, what would be the reason for a narcissist to constantly lie during a long-term relationship? Don't they know they'll be caught, like, repeatedly? Well, I think you kind of answered your own question there. So they lie. People in general lie because they're not comfortable with the truth. Some people lie to avoid consequences because they're not comfortable with it, because they know the truth will cause consequences. Their significant other is going to get upset with them. There's going to be consequences they don't want to have to deal with. But other people lie because it's fun. Um, People lie for kind of a number of reasons. When a person let's say they're constantly cheating, right? And they lie. If they're with a person, so this last part of your question, I think, is very significant here. Don't they know that they'll be caught repeatedly? Repeatedly is the key word there. So if they lie because this person's going to keep staying around. So if they're in a relationship with somebody that's going to tolerate being lied to, sure, they might call them out. You lied to me. Who is this other woman or man? And what are you doing? Da, da, da. They lie because they want to keep doing whatever it is they're going to do. They get caught. There's some sort of blow up. There's some sort of consequence. They tell their partner whatever they need to hear in order to just get off their back. Things kind of simmer down, and then it happens again. And then it happens again. And then it happens again. So they lie because they have no intention of stopping what they're doing. They just don't want to, they don't want to deal with the consequences of it. And if they're with um, a person that is going to continue to put up with that, then that's the cycle. So a person with functional boundaries and standards and deal breakers, it might give a person one, maybe it depending, one, maybe two opportunities. But if it keeps going on, if you keep circling the same mountain with that person over and over again, then they're not changing. You're in denial. You're in denial about their behavior. They're telling you everything that you want to hear in order to keep you around, and you're mistaking that for them actually changing. So, uh, yeah, they lie because it works. They get to have their cake and eat it too. And until we decide that it's, we're not going to play into that. So, Jennifer says, yeah, I told him shaming overweight people isn't cool, but he thinks it's helpful. He's hard on himself too, but he has that Joe Rogan mentality, even though he hates that show. LOL. Um, yeah, shaming here's the thing. Whenever there is a significant, here's my take on it, okay? Whenever there is a significant uh, imbalance, let's say, i- with a person, they're doing something excessively. With weight, it can be um, they've put on a lot of weight or they're struggling with keeping weight on. There's some sort of disordered eating going on, ranging from overeating to undereating. Okay. Would you ever shame a person with anorexia? I would hope not, right? It's the same kind of mentality. Is it helpful to shame a person with anorexia? No, it's not. I think there's this thing with overweight people where I almost wonder if it kind of registers this kind of primitive um, thing in our brain, in a person's brain, where it's, because it comes across as, oh, it's gluttonous. And this person, it may be on some sort of primitive level of they're going to eat all of the resources. And that's where that need to shame them comes from. It's weird because we don't do that with anybody else. It just tends to be just overweight people. So you can't say, oh, yeah, I'm doing this because it somehow helps. Because if that was the truth, then you'd shame people with anorexia as well. And we would shame people that have a drinking problem. And we would shame people that, do you see what I'm saying? And research has shown that it does not help to shame. It's not only wildly inappropriate, it's wildly unhelpful to shame somebody because they're already dealing with shame. When you see extremes of behavior, whether it's too much or not enough, um, there's more going on there. Just like if you were to watch, you see that show Hoarders. Here's another example. A person's house doesn't just get like that because they're lazy or because they like stuff. There's significantly more going on there. So to walk into that house and start yelling at them to clean it up or to pick it up, it's not helpful. It just creates more embarrassment, more shame, more feelings of isolation and just wanting to withdraw. It's not helpful. People know. People that are overweight, they know they're overweight. People that are struggling with really any challenge, hoarding, drinking, drugs, porn, um, spending, uh, you name it, they know. Like reminding them of it, catching them off guard like that, and just kind of t-boning them with shame. It's not helpful. So it might feel more helpful to us, like, yeah, I'm setting them straight, I'm making them aware of it. But it's like, really, you really think that they don't know? Like that they don't think about that probably a dozen times every single day? Come on. Um, let's see. Right. And Jennifer says, yeah, I agree. There are people with eating disorders. And he says that that's not part of his mentality, but it's like he doesn't know their hormonal or eating disorder habits. So he can't assume things because it might do more harm than good. People don't take things the same way that he thinks it helps himself. People have different personalities. Yeah. And the reality is, if somebody walked up to him and shamed him for something that they thought was not okay, he would probably not, like he wouldn't be receptive to that. I highly doubt it. I highly doubt that he would be like, man, that brutal honesty really just kind of woke me up. I highly doubt that. So, and that's the thing too with weight stuff in particular, more often than not, when you're talking extreme obesity, you're talking, um, there tends to be a lot of unprocessed trauma there. It's not just, oh, this person likes McDonald's. Like it's to just, to take such a reductionist approach is just really oversimplifying things. And um, yeah, I will tell you, it's a lot more difficult because these extreme situations, watching that show Hoarders and seeing the insides of some of these people's homes, it kind of, there's this visceral reaction that it can cause in a person where you just want to yell like, "Oh, come on, lady, what are you doing? This is nuts. I can't believe you're doing this, and your husband's nuts too for putting up with this." And it can really cause some very heated emotions, but the reality is it's not helpful, and it's not helpful. So if the intention is to truly uh be there to help that person, helping and shaming aren't in the same zip code. And it can be difficult, like, it would need to take a few steps back and to kind of, catch your breath and be like, okay, I need to approach this from a place of compassion, and I'm here to help. I'm not here to judge. Um, let's see. Jennifer says, "Oh, I'm a hoarder. He's helped me to get rid of 68 garbage bags of stuff. To be honest, I didn't miss any of that stuff. But right when he walked into my place after getting off the plane to see me, it was cleanup time. I did not know it was that bad, but it really was." Yeah. And, you know, that's kind of knowing where your boundaries are and what you're okay with and what you're not okay with. Um, I had my ex-husband, his mother. They had a lot of that house was always full of people. Um, I think I told you, they used to take in AAA ball players from the Dominican Republic 'cause, she's from Puerto Rico and spoke Spanish, and anyways, they would take in all these balls. At any given time, there was just all these people in this house, and so the house was always kind of a mess, okay? And she went into the hospital, and we went out there to visit, and I can't. That house had so much, it's just so much stuff packed all over it, and I had this complete freak out moment, and I just began throwing stuff away in the downstairs bathroom because I couldn't you couldn't even move in there, and, um, that was not appropriate, like, of me, okay? That was one of those less than, um, I didn't handle that whole situation well at all. I had this complete freak out moment. I had no more patience. I couldn't handle it, and I was so upset that everybody else just, allow kind of just enabled this to continue, and I'm like, "I can't stay here, like, we need to stay at a hotel with something. I can't breathe, like, there's just too much stuff in this house. I can't do this." And, um, you know, nobody there, now granted she was in the hospital, so she, like, didn't get to say, but nobody else had a problem with that. But, of course, hindsight being what it is, like, that was not okay. I should not have done that. Um, but there's been other situations where, like my brother has ADD, and he really struggles with organization, and it's heartbreaking. And every time I see him, I always offer, I'm like, "Hey, do you wanna go hang out? Well, I can stay at your place for a couple of days, and, we'll help you get everything cleaned up and organized." And sometimes he's up for it, and sometimes he's not. More often than not, he is, 'cause I I'm like, I'm itching to get in there. I'm like, "Oh, please let me just organize your closet," and, you know, like, I really enjoy doing that kind of stuff. So, if he's up for it, but I guess the point being is I respect his boundary. So, if he's up for it, great. If he's not, then that's fine too. And there's been times where I've had to kinda bite my tongue because I can get so frustrated. It's a frustrating thing. When a person's around things that don't make sense, it's frustrating. It tends to bring out the worst in all of us, I think. And, that's why so much more it's so much easier to slide into frustration and lashing out than it is to approach a person with like love and care and compassion. And it really takes a lot of kind of continually grounding yourself and realizing what is my intention here? Is it to help or is it to shame? And if it's to help, then are the actions that I'm taking, are they truly helpful? Or are they creating resentment and frustration and anger and shame and blame and um, all of that? Because that's not what I'm going for here. So, yeah. Missouri Cowboys here. Hello, Missouri. Uh, let's see. Let me scroll, scroll, scroll. Hmm. That is a great way to put that. Grandpappy says, we use things as a safety blanket because we're too scared to look at why we need the blanket. That is very well said. Yes. Oh, you're kidding. UNA says shaming anorexia happens to me all the time. Oh my goodness. That I am so sorry that you have to go through that. I just can't imagine. I just can't imagine what goes through people's heads to make that think that that's okay. It just breaks my heart when people, struggle with things and in such a visible way that you can see it. And weight is one of those ways. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. And oh, I just send you light and love. And I hope that you find peace. I hope that you find peace in your body and in this life. Let's see. Oh gosh, I know, isn't that wild? Jennifer saying, "Oh man, speaking of cults, I've been watching this Leah Remini docuseries on Netflix, and man, Scientology seems to be one big cult that dishes out physical, psychological, financial, and religious abuse. David Miscavige seems to be a sociopath." Yes, I saw part of that docuseries, and it's absolutely wild. And they don't even really seem like they try to hide that it's a cult. Um, it's pretty out there, and some of the stuff that he's been tied to is really disturbing. I'm pretty sure it was him. His wife or ex-wife is missing, and there's been talk that she's murdered, that he had her murdered. Yeah, I remember reading something about science or something in the docuseries about they have this Sea Org where new people they have them sign a waiver, something like that you'll pledge the next like billion years of your life to Scientology. And then you basically engage in like a lot of slave labor pretty much for the organization. And you're out at sea. And so there's this isolation. You're only with this community. It's very, very, very scary stuff. So, let's see here. Let's see. UNA says, my mother was an artist, oils and oil painting. I can draw a passable stick figure. Haha. I'm the musician and the pianist. Oh, when I was little, I was a virtuoso with paint by numbers. That's cute. That's cute. Yes, I've been thinking about taking up a musical instrument again. I took piano when I was a kid, and I don't know. I just didn't, it wasn't a good fit. The teacher I had, I just found her very intimidating. Whether or not she actually was, I don't really remember that much, but the whole experience was not a good one. So I just kind of stopped playing. But I think I would like to take up some like guitar or something, because I make up all kinds of silly little songs for animals and my plants. And I'd like to, we'll see where that goes. We'll see where that goes. Uh, Interesting. Melanie says, I had a couple of EMDR sessions years ago and it was so powerful. I still don't know if what I experienced was real. That's fascinating. I wonder, yeah, I'm so curious to and excited to dive into the EMDR world and see what it's about and how it can how it can help our community here. I've heard just so many mixed things about it. I've heard some people that absolutely just, have had amazing, like, transformational experiences with it, and then I've had others who, um, you know, felt like either they didn't get anything out of it or that it was damaging, and that's something I'd like to definitely dive more into and to figure out for those that did find it damaging, kind of what was it? Um, what was it that they found damaging, and is there anything that that practitioner could have done or done differently, or like better prepared you for, or better prepared the session for, in order to avoid that from happening? Um, yeah. Yeah. Colleen says, I have not been in the chats much, but I've been wondering if you're hearing much about people struggling with the relationship during COVID. It seems like a really hard time to make a change. Yes. Surprisingly, I feel like I haven't heard as much about the challenges with leaving during this time of COVID, as I anticipated. I really thought it was, and maybe people just aren't voicing it, I'm not sure, but I really was anticipating this is just going to be significant, and it hasn't been. So, um, yeah, that's. I'm sorry. There's a light that keeps going on and off over here, and I don't like. I kind of want to peek around the corner and see what's going on. I was doing that the other day too. It's weird, spooky. Um, I do know that there's challenges with COVID and people getting into shelters, like domestic violence shelters, kind of for all of the obvious reasons with social distancing and, um, protocol, and probably I would imagine a significantly reduced staff and those kinds of things, which is concerning. I'll also say I am very curious to see how how COVID is going to change the world. I feel like things are gonna be very different. Even even if there's a vaccine, even if we kind of get COVID stuff under control, I still feel like we're going to be left with the world that's just very different, and in both positive and negative ways. Um, but I think in some positive ways, I'm anticipating that there's going to be some uh, more resources online, like readily available online, which is fantastic because I think that's needed to be a thing for a long time. And it's also helped to reduce a lot of the stigma that I think has been present with telehealth in general. Some people, and I get it, some people prefer in person, but some people prefer telehealth. It's just easier for them. It's tends to be more affordable. It's um, in terms of like therapy, it can feel safer because they're in the comfort of their own home. Um, so yeah, it's going to be just very different. Yeah, Bricks and Feathers says, yes, how the world will change is on my mind a lot. Yeah, Critical Mass says, yes, this crisis is being used to make some really big changes in the world. Ember's talking to Jennifer and me and says, maybe we could find the most reliable CPTSD resources beyond Pete Walker's book. And then Jennifer saying, yeah, telehealth really seems to have taken off. Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think it just opens, there's so many things. Like we're at such a neat place with technology right now. It's exciting. Um, the kind of the whole, I guess to even take it to like a different level, the gamification of things is something that really has my attention lately. So, uh, you know, there's just so many ways that that could be used effectively. I think in terms of a wide variety of therapy, just from from being a nurse. Okay, like I think about game like the VR, like the Oculus headsets, VR headsets. Think about that for physical therapy for somebody that, let's say, they've had a stroke, and normal protocol, maybe they meet with their physical therapist maybe twice a week, okay, for an hour. Well, that's research has shown that the more you can engage the muscles in that certain part of the brain, the better the outcome will be. Well, that's very difficult to get into therapy multiple times a day. Insurance probably wouldn't cover that. Most people don't have that kind of money to pay for it. But you think, okay, well, using like a virtual reality headset where you had that program, uh, um, or you had physical therapists pre-record programs for certain types of injuries where you could just pick the program, right? Like these are the different muscle groups that you want to work on. This is the issue. It's a customized program that's overseen by a human, and they give you the program and then they tell you, okay, do this 3 to 5 times every day. Like that's just, it's life-changing. So I don't know. I get excited about stuff like that and the implications. Uh, Game of Colleen asked, gamification. Yeah, it's kind of turning things into a game. So, um, for example, when I was a kid, and of course, there's much better examples. This is the only one that comes to mind. This was way back in the day. Okay, I used to have this game called Fraction Fever. It was, you know, not the game that I would have chosen. It was the game that my parents chose. This was back on like a Commodore 64 computer. It was like a really old game. And it was all about learning math. So it was kind of like making fractions fun, kind of a thing. It's that kind of concept, but in a multitude of ways. So it's learning different skill sets in a fun way. So it's kind of mm, there's just all kinds of things out there. Anxiety reduction, the possibilities, I guess is what I'm saying, for like anxiety reduction. Uh, Even I would think working with especially kids and teens, um, working on muscle memory, exercise. This is probably the best one. Okay, so Paul, my boyfriend, and I, we were looking at. Um, we're both wanting to get into better shape. I just found out that I have really high blood pressure. I think it's caused like by medication, but I do need to lose weight. I just need to get into um, just improve my fitness. Anyways, so we were thinking about getting an exercise bike, and on so I was like, well, there's got to be some sort of like virtual reality um, game that would make that kind of more fun. And sure enough, there's a game that's in process where like you can fly on a Pegasus, you can row in a canoe, like you can do all of these things. So while you're cycling, it's feeding that information into this game, and that's what's giving you momentum in the game is you're pedaling the bike. So you're flying this Pegasus around, you're doing all kinds of things. So, oh, well, welcome, Terry. Terry says, where do I start? I'm bawling now, and I just found this live. I really thought I was the problem and I'm crazy, but after a few days, I see I'm a victim. Well, we're glad you're here. Okay. First time here. Any help? How to live with an extremely narcissistic husband. I can't leave my marriage. I have 5 kids. The oldest is 15. The youngest is 5 months old. I am so stuck and sad. I think a good place to start is well, I think awareness of when you can kind of get to that place where you realize that it's not you, um, in the sense of if you've been on the receiving end of a lot of projection and a lot of blame and a lot of you've basically kind of been his emotional punching bag, if that's been your situation where you do nothing right and all of his bad behavior is your fault, and and all of this kind of seeing um that manipulative behavior for what it is a big step. If you go to my website, which is thriveafterabuse.com, and I would encourage anybody who's new here to do that. Go under the tab that says book club. There's an area for uh, the second set of notes. It's for the verbally abusive relationship. A fantastic book. It's by Patricia Evans, and she really outlines a wide variety of kind of more like verbal and emotional abuse that tends to fly under the radar. And so once you're aware of it, it's this huge kind of aha moment of, oh my gosh, yeah, that's been a lot of what I've been experiencing. And no wonder I've been feeling very diminished and abused because I have been. So uh, I would encourage you to look at those notes on that because it's just very eye opening. I have a support group. You can find me on Facebook. If you look, if you go look on Facebook for Thrive After Abuse, you'll find the page and then you'll also find the group. If you do decide to join, I would highly recommend that you create a fake profile to join, just because that's the only way. I think it's just the safest way. And especially if you're going to try to stay in the relationship. So there's, I don't even know how many, 50 something thousand people in there. And it's a wonderful way to get support around the clock. Um, so that's a resource for you. Um, yeah, that's a lot. I would encourage you to consider getting, um, just kind of getting support for you. So if the plan is for you to stay, then um, getting some support with finding peace, kind of carving out time for you, carving out time for having kind of just having peace in your life, given the situation and kind of given the limitations that you're working with. And um, yeah, so we're glad you're here. Oh, really? Ember's Firewalker says, Dana, Patricia Evans was my counselor, and those books opened my abusive ex's eyes for the first time. Oh, interesting. I guess didn't fully process what you had said. I just had read the part of she was your counselor. That is so cool. For abusive, for people that engage in that kind of behavior, that's more on um, the passive aggressive end of the spectrum, which is a lot of what that book covers. It's kind of the withdrawing, the diminishing, the minimizing, the invalidating. If every now and again, sometime, and this is a definitely um, your mileage may vary kind of thing. You really have to know your situation best. Um, Sometimes certain partners are open to exploring their behavior. I would say it's more few and far between. You'll know if they're open to it or not based on how defensive they get. It can definitely help approaching it in more of a neutral way, but some people have such um, kind of such a pathological worldview that in such a degree of narcissism that nothing is ever, ever, ever their fault. It's always somebody else's fault. With that, it's you're screaming into the wind, trying to get them to see the error of their ways. It just is very difficult. Terry asks, is this live stream once a week, every week this time? Yes, it's 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays. And if you text the number, okay, if you text Dana Live, DANALIVE, to the number 22999, it'll sign you up for a text alert and you'll get an alert every single time I go live. So it'll be Wednesdays and then Tuesdays. Angie Atkinson and I, she's a life coach who also does narcissistic abuse, um, works with people struggling with narcissistic abuse. We alternate channels on Tuesday afternoons for live streams. Yep, I agree. Embers says, um, Patricia Evans has a YouTube video that starts out, if you've ever been told that you're too sensitive, then you've experienced verbal abuse. Yeah, I agree. It's invalidating and it's diminishing and it's minimizing, and everybody's an individual, like it's there's such that lack of empathy when and just kind of social tone deafness when we think, oh yeah, well, my sense of humor is everybody's sense of humor, or my way of doing it's every way should be everybody's way of doing it. And if not, then I'm going to put them down for it. Like that's not okay. And her definition, she talks about abuse in terms of uh, defining and diminishing, um, basically defining, diminishing, and destructive behavior. And I think that's a much more thorough and expansive definition because that's really what it is. So, and it can be intentional or unintentional. That's the thing, is it doesn't matter. Like we don't need to try to figure out somebody else's intention behind it. What did they mean to be hurtful? Is it their culture? Is it their generation? Is it their age? Is it their, um, the way they were raised? Is it me? Do I just have unprocessed trauma from my past? Is that why that joke didn't land? Or is that why I have an issue with X, Y, and Z or whatnot? If somebody crosses a line with you and you're just not okay, um, with whatever it might be, like, that's okay. That's your boundary. That's what we all do anyhow. It's just not something that tends to be as spelled out as I'm doing right now. But that's how everybody goes about their boundaries. It varies. It varies from day to day, hour to hour, person to person. You know, you might be open to joking with your best friend about a certain topic in one way, but then in another day you're just not in the mood, and that's okay. It's boundaries isn't about punishing other people, it's about just kind of keeping ourselves safe. It's just letting other people know, this is okay with me, this is not okay with me. You think about an animal, for example, a dog, okay? You give a dog a new toy. That dog might growl at you. That dog setting the boundary. This is mine. I don't want to share. Go away. Right? They let you know. Well, as I don't know, maybe within a few days after the dog realizes, oh, we can play with this toy together, and you're not going to take it from me, and you're not going to eat my dog bone, or you're not going to, you know what I mean? Then they might be more inclined to play to share. And then they don't growl. Maybe their tail wags. They bring it over and they drop it in your lap or by your feet. Their boundary for that changes. People are the same way. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Embers says, I also explained to criticizing people that I am a highly sensitive person. Is this in the DSM yet? Um, to my knowledge, no. Highly sensitive person is not. Let me do a Google search though. Yeah, where it's kind of left right now, it says highly sensitive person isn't designated in the DSM, but experts agree there's more research needed. And here's the thing too, with criticizing people, um, sometimes explaining that you really don't even need to justify that, okay, well, I just don't do well with criticism because, I'm a highly sensitive person, or because I've had a bad day, or because I've had trauma, or because of this. It's Of course, they're probably not going to get this, but I guess I just want you to know this, that um, most people don't respond well to criticism. Even constructive criticism can be very difficult. And usually, even constructive criticism, even when it's wanted, can be difficult to hear for any of us. So, people that just go around criticizing others, nobody likes that. Like, really, nobody's okay with that. It's rude and it's unwanted. And who says that their criticism is valid? It may or may not be. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Let's see, I'm scrolling. Bricks and Feathers says, yeah, I was always told that, oh, you're too sensitive or you're thin-skinned. Mm. And I mean, the reality is you're not, because everybody's tolerance and appreciation for things is different, you know? Like, uh, I don't know. It's like the people have different preferences across the board with food. Let's say, for example, let's say if you don't like, uh, I don't know, if you're not a fan of Chinese food, there's nothing wrong with you. You just don't happen to like Chinese food, you know? Some or spicy food. That's probably here, that's a good example. So my mom does not like she can't eat spicy food, but she does not like it at all. So thankfully she's not missing out on anything because she just doesn't like spicy food. I love spicy food. Thai food, Indian food, um, just Mexican food, spicy food. Those are my people. Like, I just love spicy food. And, but, I don't think there's anything wrong with her. I don't understand her palate. Like, I I can't imagine just eating kind of bland food day in and day out. I think I would just cry a lot. But but she can't understand my palate. She's always like, "Ooh, how can you eat that? How can you do that? Oh, that smells so spicy." She can't even be near it. So it doesn't make either one of us right or wrong. It just means we're different. Cecilia says, "Oh, I love Indian, Thai, Japanese food." Yes. Yes, Indian and Thai. Those are probably two of my favorite. And Mexican. Indian, Thai, and Mexican. Top 3. Mm, let's see. Jennifer, I thought you lived in Michigan. Are you from Canada? Did I miss that? How did I not know that? I feel like I should have known that. Uh, I'm going to say this name incorrectly, but Excel Garduno says hello from Mexico. Hello. Hello, hello. UNA says, I love rainbow pepper and Tabasco sauce. I've never had rainbow pepper, but it sounds fun. I don't know. Tabasco sauce, I'm with you on that. That stuff's great. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Scroll. If you guys are new here, I guess I'll just repeat this again. I signed up for a text alert system finally. So if you have questions that you would like answered on the live stream, you can text. Well, you have to sign up first. It's free, of course. You text Dana live to the number 22999. And once you're subscribed, you can you can message me questions that you would like discussed on the live stream. It's going to be so fun. That's my new toy, is this text alert thing. This is so cool. You can have different keywords and then you can send out different texts. What? UNA says rainbow pepper is just a combination of black, red, green, and white peppercorns. How have I never heard of this? That sounds amazing. That's going to be on my list of things to try in the next week. Carmelita asks, do you believe that anyone ever actually recovers from narcissistic abuse, or is it just having the best life possible despite the abuse? Oh, that's a good question. So it's a big question. It's a good question, and it's kind of a big answer that I'm trying to consolidate in my brain. So I guess, okay. Like, where to even begin with this? Okay, so in short, life is here's my stance on it. Life is full of painful events. It's just part of being human. There is no escaping it. If we live long enough, we're going to experience a wide variety of traumatic events. And for some, I think frankly, for many, narcissistic abuse, it tends to be one of those. The word recovery, I'm not a fan of that word for a couple of different reasons, because because life is always about moving forwards. There is never any going back. And recovery tends to imply kind of returning to where we once were in terms of recovering from abuse, for example. But because we can't ever go back to where, even if life was all just sunshine and rainbows, we still can't go back. So there never is any going back. There is only ever going forward. So I think a lot of kind of healing from this has to do with being very intentional about the words that we use and kind of getting on the same page with definitions of them. So do I think that it's possible to go back to the person that we were before we experienced this abuse? No, but I also don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And frankly, I think it's a good thing, because it's sort of like burning that bridge behind us, and it forces us to move forward. So I've seen a lot of people, myself included, for a long time, get stuck in this recovery process because they keep trying to get back to the person that they once were, and they feel, because they can't seem to do that, because that old self is no longer there, they feel angry and sad and frustrated and kind of forever broken. If kind of once people are introduced to this new concept of that life is always about moving forward, and we can heal from something, and when we're able um, to kind of move through the process of healing from pain, and then we're not trying to the focus isn't on kind of becoming who we once were. It's about creating a new and empowering um, person, like creating a new and empowering self for this next chapter in our life. So that whole concept has a lot to do with the newish branch of psychology known as positive psychology. So before, with therapeutic treatments, the whole premise was on a person having a baseline, kind of where they once were. or how they normally are. This is a person's baseline. And then the main goal of therapy was, okay, so somebody had something traumatic happen, that therapy would try to get them back to this level of baseline functioning. So kind of back to where they once were. Positive psychology it questions all of that and says, okay, well, what if we don't aim for that? Because who's to say that that baseline was ever really that functional, or that kind of effective or working that well for them to begin with? So instead of like aiming for their baseline or aiming for quote unquote normal, like let's aim for something exciting, like a new and empowered, like their highest and best self. Like let's set that as a goal instead of the baseline. And setting that new and empowered goal just radically changes everything. It really does. So it has been my experience, personally and professionally, with people that can set that goal of, um, like, when people have had this kind of bomb go off in their life, which is exactly what being abused feels like, especially relationship type of abuse, then it's overwhelming because your whole life is blown apart, right? And you're surrounded by rubble. But on the kind of the uh, bright side, I guess, the bright side of things is that you're also at this almost kind of magical place of you're now forced to rebuild your life, which is a massive undertaking. I get that. But at the same time, there's a lot of power in that because now you're consciously choosing each piece that you're rebuilding your life with. So you're consciously rebuilding your life piece by piece, which is a lot of work, which is why most people, what most of us, aren't going to go just start that process if things are working well enough. It tends to only be that window of opportunity to radically build a great life for ourselves tends to kind of only be only that window of opportunity only tends to be open for a limited time. And it tends to be in those moments where that rock bottom, it's when those rock bottom times surface where we're forced to, we have no other choice uh, then, okay, I've got to rebuild everything. But then you're kind of like, well, hell, while I'm here, like if I've got to rebuild everything, then I might as well consciously go about it instead of just rebuilding with all of the same pieces in the same order as before, thinking about, does this really go here? And when what that looks like, it's questioning the different pieces and places of your inner circle, your boundaries, your standards, your um, deal breakers, the type of communication you have, the relationships, what types of relationships you're wanting to have, your friendships, everything across the board, everything. And it can be really, really powerful and empowering. So, like I said, it's been my experience both personally and professionally that those that have been able to recover from abuse um, uh, are more those that have been able to consciously rebuild their life after something like this and rebuild it with in the most empowering way possible tend to not only have a good life despite the abuse, but almost, and this is, I don't mean this in a, this might sound worse than I mean it, but they almost have a really amazing life because of what happened. Because it took that bomb going off in their life and breaking everything down for them to start building things up again. I'm not saying that I would wish this on anybody or that I would want to go through it again. I definitely wouldn't. But this is where that setting that intention for yourself, setting that empowering north star of this is how I'm going to come out on the other side of this and this is what I'm going to use this for. And this event doesn't this event doesn't have to define me. I can let this event reveal me. I can use this for my highest and greatest good, and I can use this for the highest and greatest good of others. So there's a lot of power in that, but there definitely um, that tends to kind of come at a later stage in healing but it's there. Bricks and Feathers says, I'm not saying you're wrong, but the idea that people have to hit rock bottom really bothers me. I don't know why. Well, and here's the thing is people don't have to hit rock bottom. It'd be wonderful if, and some people don't. Like some people are able to the learn from the pain of others and avoid rock bottom in general. But rock bottom is always a teacher. It always is. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, that's it's it's that pain of rock bottom that cuts through our excuses, it cuts through denial, it cuts through um, all kinds of things. And there's no other option. There's nowhere else left to go. And that's kind of the power of rock bottom. But yeah, if we can start taking action before we hit rock bottom, definitely easier that way. Yeah, that's a really great point. Missouri Cowboy saying, oh shoot, there it is. He says, assuming that one has a baseline visible, I had to dig to find mine, as in boundaries. I had few, if any. Slowly healing began and continues. And that is a really great point because, you know, we're so close to ourselves. It's difficult for any one of us to have that um, emotional distance to see ourselves clearly. So uh, it's easier. It always is, right? For other people to see things about us more clearly than we're able to see about ourselves, and vice versa. So it can take some and this is where, kind of to loop all the way back around to tactful honesty. If you have emotionally safe people in your life, this can be a very interesting conversation to have, to to ask them. And again, this takes a lot of like emotional safety. The person has to have really proven themselves to be tactful and supportive and not just going to be using you as an emotional punching bag. Um, but to help bring awareness to, okay, like where is my baseline for this? Like where do my standards tend to be? And kind of, like, yeah, where are my standards for this? And where is my baseline level of functioning? Terry says, is it possible to live with a narcissist and be happy? I cannot leave my marriage or I'll be homeless. I think it's going to depend on a lot of different factors within the dynamic of the relationship. Everybody's relationship is very different. Um, at a minimum, I absolutely think it's possible to unhook our feelings from the situation around us. So it's obviously it's significantly easier to feel a certain way, to feel happy if we're in a happy relationship, right? It's it's a lot more challenging to maintain those feelings of happiness, or to have those feelings of happiness um, to meet those needs in other ways outside of the relationship. So it's still possible to be happy, but more likely than not, it won't come from the relationship. So finding other ways to find fulfillment, to find peace, to find emotional support, to find a lot of these things that might normally be found in a spouse, to find in other areas of your life. Because that's kind of the challenge with being in a relationship with a very narcissistic person, is they're kind of, by definition, there's no real room for anybody else. It tends to just be all about them all of the time. It's their wants, their needs, their boundaries, their everything, and everybody else is just along for the ride. And if you disagree with them, then you're being mean and insensitive and hurtful and cruel. And uh, they just, there's kind of just this inability to see outside of themselves. And whether or not that's going on in your relationship, I don't know. I don't have any information, but that tends to be the case for a lot of people in relationships like that. I think the bigger question has to do with physical safety and emotional safety, and kind of where along that spectrum is, to what degree is your spouse's um, behavior negatively impacting you and in your children. McDonald says, yeah, rock bottom was the best thing that happened to me. Terry, I will say one of the things that you can do is you can call a domestic violence shelter in your area, and you can talk. Generally, they have staff there 24 hours a day, um, and you can kind of come up with, you can brainstorm some ideas with them. At a minimum, they can be a good place to talk and to vent and to be heard. So that's another idea as far as resources go. I can imagine it would be very overwhelming having 5 kids ranging in age from 5 months to 15 years old with a person, and feeling completely stuck and helpless and um, unable to get out. So I think at a minimum, kind of exploring some options as far as like, well, what if? And um, opening up that conversation and starting to feel validated, it can help. So I think I'm gonna sign off here pretty soon. I'm downstairs and it's getting cold. It's getting really cold down here. So, um, let's see. Oh, I guess I'll also mention for those of you that are newish here, these live streams are also turned into podcasts, and we do 2 podcasts a week. I want to say they go out either Wednesday and Thursday or Thursday and Friday. I'm not sure which. But podcasts, you can find them on my website, thriveafterabuse.com, under the, I think, listen tab or podcast tab. And any podcasts across the internet, like Stitcher, um, iTunes, SoundCloud, I think, and pretty much all places podcasts live, you can find these live streams. So with that said, I think I'm going to sign off. I hope to see you guys next week. And as always, just lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and I will see you next week. Okay? Good night.